Hey everyone, welcome to episode 11 of the Koi Talk podcast with myself, Chris Wall, and Ricky Stoddart.
That's it.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm alright.
Sure.
Just been on holiday, haven't I?
Yep.
You see how thrilled I sound about that?
Yeah, is it one of those ones where you need a holiday when you get back from the holiday?
No, it was great, really. I'm just saying, but yeah, the kids are pretty intense. So everything in
yes,
world
mate.
in one place. But
Yeah, I can testify for that, having just had one recently. So yeah, it's good to be back in the studio, mate.
Absolutely.
Magazine's doing well. Great feedback as always.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you to all our new recent subscribers. It's going in the right direction, which is nice because we're on a mission with this just to improve koi keeping as a whole. I think seeming from some of the feedback, we're doing it. So
yeah, it's nice when we get the feedback that we're actually having an impact and reducing heartache in the hobby, or fish suffering. The animal welfare is a big thing to both of us, so yeah, it's just nice to have an impact. So
whatever it is, and yeah, keep trying to get people in here as well. Proving to be quite a challenge, isn't it? Pinning people down. We are working on it, guys. But I know last time my chat with Tim went down really well.
Yes, great chat.
He's got experience from a side of the hobby that me or you can't reach back to, which is nice, different perspective. So
yeah,
we are trying to unearth these people and get them sat in here. So we keep going at it.
Yeah, I mean, it is an industry where you make hay in the summer, isn't it? So it's, particularly this time of year, it is a bit intense for everyone.
Struggle. So everyone will just have to put up with me and you for a time being until we can get someone else tied down.
Yeah, well, yeah. I hope we'll cause some interest, but yeah, we basically had a back catalogue of questions over the months since we started. People asking for us to do articles on specific subjects. Some of them are just a bit too expansive to put into an article base. Some of these subjects we could literally write a book on it.
Yeah, quite a bit of variables at time, aren't there?
Yeah,
conversation sort of expands as you're going along.
So thinking out loud, best format was let's have a chat about it and discuss pros and cons or our views in general.
Yeah.
Let's get going. I mean, the first question is, a lot of people may find the subject a bit controversial. We're a little bit more black and white about it, but we're quite an open company to people that are going to give our opinions, like it or not. But first question from Paul Hastings, and it goes as this: given both your comments in recent months, why do you feel heat ramping is not a valid method in detecting and exposing KHV?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I wouldn't say that comments as such mean that we don't feel it's a valid method. It is a method.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
I don't think either of us are denying that. I just think that we both have a bit more of a scientific background, and given this particular method, I think people are maybe under the illusion that if the fish is ramped, that the KH-free status is completely nullified, which we both know is not the case.
Yeah.
So I'm not for 1 second saying, it's all about mitigating risks, isn't it?
Yep.
And I think Jos Dirks, when we had him in a few weeks ago,
absolutely
hit the nail on the head. And the best analogy and parallel we can draw is with the whole COVID scenario. Mm-hmm. Without testing, there's a fairly... It's a bit sort of put your finger in the air and see which way the wind's blowing.
I think for me, when I spoke about this from sort of Koi Wholesale's perspective, was the angle that I'm looking for the absolute best method I can find. Nothing's a given, nothing's certain in the job other than actually having an outbreak. So, which is what we obviously don't want to get to. So, for me, it was just over the years what I've watched is and this can happen, just one single method, i.e. the heat ramping, being brought to the table as if it's the only way to do it. And then that's what's become the common belief. And then anybody who's done anything outside of that has been sort of
Wrong.
like frowned upon as if they're not doing it right, which is the bit was really important for me to get across, as we're doing with everything with Koi Talk and myself with Koi Wholesale. It's just trying to show people, you know, there are other ways and probably possibly better ways and simpler ways of doing stuff. In this case, it wasn't about being simpler. The route I ended up going down, and let's say in my mind with the logic, was the testing. You know, we need to check the DNA. We've got to look, you know, at the fish properly to try and identify if there's virus there. There's still parts of the whole process that that have to be done in order to try and get the highest level of accuracy out of the test. And yeah, the tests aren't perfect, but in my opinion, that's the absolute most you can do. And for me, it was looking around at what everybody, you know, is offering and got available, and looking at, you know, what does the authorities do. That was a point that we really stressed there. You know, we're not, unfortunately, there's not somebody in our industry saying this is the way it must be done. There's no authority there, i.e. CFAS, who probably is the biggest authority we've got, saying it should be done this way. So what it is left to is everybody to make their own mind up on what to do. So I took the logical approach and thought, well, you know, if CFAS want to prove there's an infection there, they test. Started testing, and then obviously refine the process behind their incubation period to try and, you know, multiply any virus if it's there, but also pointing out, and this was the thing I was really keen to stress when we started on this, was that the focus all there seemed to be for so many years on quarantine just being about KHV and heat ramping, when it's about so much more than just that one virus. You know, it's all right people focusing in on KHV and ignoring CEV, which, you know, the podcast with Jos perfectly highlighted the risk of that virus, and then the importance of mitigating against the risk of CEV, which weren't even being spoke about. And then the fact that quarantine, a huge part of it, you know, bacterial infections, we spoke again with Jos about them and the severity and the complexity of them. I think I even said myself, you know, I'd probably take KHV over a bacterial infection, to be honest with you. They're equally as bad. Yeah. When you get them. CEV, again, you know, we're talking severe mortality rates if left. It's just, quarantine is expansive, and then it's the whole process that starts, in my opinion, right back at the breeders that we're dealing with and knowing their practices and where fish are coming in. Are they buying parent fish from unknown origins that present a risk? Everything they're doing, are they exposing fish to CEV, sleeping sickness, when they're being harvested from the mud ponds? Or are they not? So is that something we know we've got to really deal with when those fish come over to make sure those fish are safe? So I really just wanted to broaden the conversation really around quarantine and not just focusing on this one. It is one tiny part of it. But then again, with the testing, we're expanded that out now. So we're you know, KHV, CEV as well. We're screening for more stuff than ever. And when we actually look outside of the UK, in the EU, the testing method seems to be the most prominent. Some dealers I see out in the States really getting behind that method. And obviously in Japan itself, the government, the authority there, part of their screening program, 3 times a year for all the registered breeders is to test. So again, it's not bomb-proof. None of the methods are. We know that. But it was just about finding the big thing. But for me, it's just broadening people's thought process and conversations around quarantine in general, not just being about that one thing. You can focus on that and all of a sudden get sandbagged by a bacterial problem from one side, and my God, you've
more than likely more prevalent than
that.
A viral. It's not putting that it's aside.
It's all serious stuff, isn't it?
It's
and for me, the conversation, all these things haven't been in the conversation, and that's why, again, you know, it's not to scare people, but we speak about CEV. If you say it's a new emerging virus, we've been dealing with sleeping sickness for years, haven't we, on this side of the fence? But you know, so many people have only just become really aware of those 3 letters and what it's all about, when it's something that we've been, you know, a big part of my quarantine protocol for years has been
standardised
working against that, isn't it? So
I think you touched on a point, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here when I say that I previously have contacted CFAS for some guidance on this, you know, when I was younger, just saying, you know, because what is the best method? There is no overriding protocol, and they won't commit to it. And
they don't seem to want to commit, do they?
And I'm sure they won't say it publicly. They'll probably be a little bit like ourselves. In fact, I know they won't. When it comes to passing comment on processes, if they recognised heat ramping as a method that successfully, I'm not saying it doesn't bring it out,
no,
but you could equally bring it out in other methods, then I think we'd all kind of sit up and go, that's a lot of people that sort of shy away from the concept of heat ramping. It's because they're not convinced or committed. The science doesn't back it up. It's a good headline.
Yep.
Do this, and you can incubate the virus.
Yeah.
But there's other things at play, and if the governing body that actually do research and are government funded to do research on this specific subject will not commit to something, and their overriding method for bringing fish from a country of origin in is by testing.
Yeah.
There needs to be some transparent. I don't.
It's tough, isn't it? That without regulator, you look at other industries and they're regulated to hell. We aren't, so it's left with thing. But what I didn't want to see is, I see it too many times where there's dealers who are falsely saying that they're heat ramping. Yeah. Which is one thing. This leads into another problem. It's about people really showing. It's quite easy to say that you do.
Yeah.
Testing's a different beast. I've got a test report every time a batch of fish has been sampled. It's traceable. We know every little thing. I also tapped into the fact it's about a bigger biosecurity picture as well. And how important traceability is when you do on the CFAS conversation. How big traceability is with them. Part of my license to import is traceability. Fish movements off the site as much as possible, and through all the systems that I use. We've got a very high degree of traceability of where a batch of fish arrived into, and actually then tracing them when they move off site to all the dealers as well. Really, really important stuff. But also through then the isolation methods in quarantine, where I've got every breeder's fish isolated, right down to different batches from different breeders being isolated as well. So I've got complete traceability. If there ever is a problem, I can pinpoint it. And what we're seeing in other instances, where you've got big, breeders' fish being mixed in at the point of arrival, who do you blame? Because if there's not an active known infection in Japan, who do you actually blame? You can't reverse engineer the process to actually find out, well, is something in Japan actually being missed? Or because, if there's 6 breeders' fish gone into one pond, you can try and point the finger at all 6 of them. Or is it something actually endemic, a problem on the site? Possibly. Who knows? So that traceability is really, really important, in my opinion, for them not repeating these problems if they ever occur. If you think about it, if it is generally due to a breeder, you can say, right, well, whatever's happening there, that's not reliable. Testing method's not reliable. Whatever's going on, but yeah, it would take one instance of that for me, and I would red flag that breeder forever, to be honest with you. Even this year, to be honest with you, it pissed me off a little bit seeing Chogro is come back on now.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't speak about this. I'm more than happy to. Chogro got KHV, so he's had KHV 3 times now from what I can remember, and the place has been wiped out 3 times, and 3 times he's restarted. Now after the first time, I sympathised. That's unfortunate. Whatever's happened, but hopefully he'll get back on his feet and do it again. And I think after that I did buy a fish again. I mean, it's a tough thing. It produces Practina, the best in the world, hands down, and they're quite hard things to buy. Second time he got it, I'm like, shit, how's that happened again? There's nobody else is having this problem. It's really isolated. How's that gone off again? So I can't remember if I did actually buy any fish after that point. Third time around, absolutely not. Just cannot. Obviously, I really can't remember if I had fish after the second time or not, but I know if we would have done, I'd have treated them with extreme caution anyway. But for the third time around, so he's come back onto the market this season after it, and I just will not go near that with a barge pole, because I'm not going to risk my business reputation, my biosecurity on somebody who manages to keep fucking up like he is doing. For whatever reason he's doing it, there's somewhere in his practices, something he's doing that's allowing him to keep getting that problem. So I'm not going to go anywhere near it. Just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's about safeguarded as well, isn't it? I mean, it's certainly not in anyone's interest in the industry to cover anything up, per se.
And people have been filling the boots with his fish this year.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing, and that's where, for me, I'm saying this biosecurity starts at source. This whole thing starts at source by knowing what the hell's going on and being sensible about it. I would rather go without patch and a full stop than risk going back to that farm and doing. Yep, he's allowed, you know, whatever he's doing is this period where he'll test negative and do fine. But for me, absolutely not. 3 times, 3 strikes and you're out. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty logical, isn't it? I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I probably won't know the ins and outs of it.
No,
100%. But it does seem that perhaps a bit of malpractice there, or something doesn't quite add up, which is a shame because, like you say, the platinum breeder out there, but
he's unbelievable, and even got back this year. I think every koi show I've seen he's been at, he's won every first prize in every size in that category that he's entered into. Hats off to the guy, and obviously coming back, I don't want to see it's his livelihood. You know, you don't want to see anybody finished off like that. No. But likewise, I'm looking out for mine, and by sheer association, the thousands of hobbyists that will no doubt have fish that have passed through my hands at some point. And I've got too much respect for all those people to risk it on a guy that can't seem to get his shit together. Though, yeah, coming back to your original question, it was just more, it's a much bigger topic and consideration than just heat ramping.
Yeah, I think it's maybe people are jumping on the fact that reading between the lines, we're not against it per se. We're just not saying it is as credible as maybe it might.
It's just not. It's not
it might be perceived.
Yeah,
you know.
This is it.
You know, and obviously we're talking decades now that this particular protocol's been in place, and we got absolutely schooled a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
with just how dated some of our knowledge is. And I
serious
think,
problem, isn't it?
And I think it is time to embrace technology. We rely on it so much for everything else, but for some reason, and in this industry, time stood still with certain mindsets.
And again, I just can't. Just logic tells me, you know, I look around at what everybody all over the world's doing. The primary method seems to be testing, yet we're saying, no, we don't need to test. We'll just crank the heat up and down a little bit.
Well, that's the other thing as well.
Simplify it.
There's probably the whole concept is to stress the fish. You're trying to heat ramp in a polytunnel when you're sat in the middle of June or July is very difficult.
It's tough, but not only that. I mean, you say heat ramping. Obviously, a big pot. One paper that I actually read, and I don't read many because they're a hard read. But the term they used around it was incubation and heat stress, and that made a lot of sense to me about cranking that temperature up into the range where the virus becomes active, most or at least there you can start incubating it and obviously building the levels up prior to a test. But everything I read all resulted in some sort of testing at the end of it. So we're not scientists, are we? We're just trying to figure out, the same as everybody in the industry, trying to figure out what's best. But I think the key thing to look out for here as a hobbyist is between the dealers that sort of are acting and investing and those that aren't, to be honest with you, and those that have bad practices. I know there's people out there that import fish through agents and within 2 weeks they're being sold. That people like that, in all truth, I do believe need exposing and kicking out the industry because it's such poor practice. I know we can just about physically get their head straight from import after about 2 weeks. But it's absolutely no time at all for for any proper screening or anything there to be done, and that's going to be a fish that, to be honest with you, is going to have a rocky ride the minute it moves to another.
It's on a knife edge, isn't it?
Well, completely.
Might be alright, might equally not be alright.
So I think this is another thing people want to pay more attention to. It's not necessarily the people that are seeming to do something; it's those that are doing nothing and getting away with it.
Yeah,
to be
fair
honest
comment.
with you.
Yeah.
And it's that shit, to be honest, it makes me piss boil seeing them people do get away with it when you look at the level of investment I've made in what I'm doing, the amount you spend in testing every year. Even those guys that have invested in the heat ramping in facilities to heat and kill, isolated quarantine facilities, all these things are part of a bigger biosecurity program and quarantine protocol, which are crucial. So those people at any level should be praised. If those guys can't, because this is the bit that concerns me, is a lot of those people that do import directly, it's because, and the ones I've mentioned who aren't doing things properly, it's because they're chasing, just paying the lowest price to make a quick buck, but causing absolute havoc and damaging reputations of the industry in general in the process of it. Whereas those that are importing directly and doing it properly are investing in these facilities and all the protocols, and likewise them dealers that have got high standards but then, you know, haven't got those fillers and setups. Comes somebody like me who knows I'm doing all that bit, so they haven't got to, or not got to worry about it. You know, so I think realistically that's what we want to be looking at, you know, and exposing really those people that aren't doing the job properly and just taking the piss, really.
I think probably leads on to, I mean, good question, Paul. It's an interesting topic to discuss. I think it does bring into question, is there room or is there a place for a body that can directly assist with protocol within the industry? And if there is, who is it and what is the best? But, you know, because at the moment we are trying to connect dots here. You know, we're going, if you need to expose X, we need to do Y, but we can't agree on that Y point. But science says this is what you need to do. The industry says no, do it this way. This is the best way.
It just comes down to, it's something that, let's face it, like with koi clubs, anything, you could set that up, we could set that up tomorrow, you know, form a governing body for dealers or something like that. But all I see straight away there is politics and bullshit that's just going to cause probably more harm than good in the long run, unfortunately. Unless they get the right people behind it. And that's it, who are the right people. That's another argument yet again. I think it needs to come from somebody of serious authority, like a CFAS.
With complete impartiality.
The only people who can do it. And when you speak to them guys, it's just the same as any other government agency, you know, massively overstretched, under-resourced, and their primary objective, remember, is to protect the UK waterways. They ain't bothered about, you know,
someone's
guy's
pond.
Just not where they're at. So,
and you can understand that. It's just more of a frustration aired from people on the other side of the fence, because I genuinely believe there's a lot of people that don't know the best route to take.
No, they don't. But I think this is what, by again opening up the discussion and like presenting it as I have just, you know, explaining my thought process on a quarantine protocol in whole, I do believe everybody out there is smart enough to make their own mind up of then who is a good choice and a bad choice to be buying from. And like I say, the big thing here is not to hone in on that one thing too specifically, because there's just this whole bigger picture.
Spectrum,
You can easily identify a dealer where you're going to be feeling comfortable. Even a dealer with the best protocols in the world can get caught out. That's just the reality of it. We try everything we can, but something could at some point slip through. That's the reality of it. If you're scared of all them risks, I'm sorry, you need to shut your pond down today, because they're ones that are there. But it's on you really, or the koi keeper, to assess who was the right dealer to buy from. And you do that easily, you know, visually. When you visit a place, you can tell, you know, if there's manky ponds and fish kicking around all over the place, you walk away. Plain and simple, because clearly, like in the instance I was playing with Chogoro, he can't do it right, and he poses too much of a risk, so get away from it. That's it. And that's the same with dealers over here. Don't just go thinking, for whatever it is your mates told you or a group that you're in says this is the place you need to be buying from. If it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, walk away from it. There's plenty of choice out there.
Yeah, okay. I think that's we could probably go on all day about this subject, but I think that's a pretty good overview.
If getting into the what's right and what's wrong really comes down to people like Yoss, who are the guys that really know and understand this shit on the crazy scientific levels that us mere mortals can't even get near. Other than that, like I say, we're just figuring out what's best for what we can do. So I just think for the general public listening, you want to be looking, just clearly split it between, you can see the guys that are putting the effort in and the ones that aren't. Plain and simple, traceability. If someone wants to be all coy about their practices, and shy or reserved or not want to really think about where the fish are coming from and what they're doing, walk away. That's it. Anybody, I will quite happily openly discuss my protocols. If it's not for somebody, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's it. But I know, which is most importantly, I know deep down that I'm doing the absolute most that I can. And I think the comment I'd also said is, let's face it, ultimately, yes, I'm concerned about, the dealer I'm supplying to and further on the hobbyists that those fish are going to. But if I let a notifiable disease onto my site like that, it would be crippling. The sheer, how many fish is sat in a single fish house, financially. Obviously, reputations take a dint as well, but just financially alone, it would be crippling. So I want to take every possible precaution I can to prevent that from ever happening.
Yeah, well, I think, we can't really say much more than that unless we sort of really go into the rabbit hole. So, thanks, Paul. Good question. And, appreciate your messaging in. Yeah. Next question is from Gary King. With rising costs in the hobby, do you feel something needs to be done as an industry to secure its future?
Oh, you run with that first.
Yeah, I'm not sure. As an industry, I think as an industry, we're quite keen to, how do I word this, to force feed products that perhaps aren't in the best interest of longevity.
Yeah, might make sense.
Classic example, buy a pump for £100. It'll probably cost you twice as much to run as the pump that costs you £300. Yeah. But it only costs you £100 when you buy it. Now, it's hard to get your mindset into that if you're any level of koi hobbyist. If you've got to work to a budget, then it's the easy answer, isn't it? Can the industry do anything? Obviously, research and technology is always going to advance. Yeah. I wouldn't know on the technical side of things. The guys at Evolution Aqua, Oaza, Sequence, I know they're at the pinnacle of trying to get as much out of a pump for as least amount of energy as possible. I think it comes down to some of it is self-fulfilling. People give the impression that you have to keep koi in a certain way.
Here we go.
Yeah. You have to have 50 pumps on your pond. You have to have maximum flow rate. You have to have, and it's this mentality that it's just got to a snowball to a point now that, how did people keep koi 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah. I cannot stress enough, and I'm going to let you venture off on computer in a minute and just dig this out because I've spoke about this already. So my whole keep it simple, I think this is where it's all going wrong. There is a basic minimum requirement for running a koi pond that you can't get away from. You need a pump, you need an air pump. You don't actually need a UV, but obviously if you want to see your fish, it's beneficial. Really, if I missed out there.
From an electrical point of view,
air pump. There we go. Right. So
3 items.
I'm going to come down again to the one variable I've got to take out of this is the fact that I'm obviously been heating to get the growth, but a lot of the basic premises here apply. So if anybody's not seen it on my Koi Wholesale channel, the Shinoda Hiyotsuri grow out that we've been tracking from when those fish arrived. So we had 1,000 pieces of 6 to 12 centimetre Hiyotsuri, as turn up. Went into one of my 3,500 gallon ponds that is heated, so obviously that bit out of the equation. which is a very expensive part of koi keeping, but not essential. But that basic system there, just actually coming back to that heat while I'm on it, obviously part of the heating, yes, over winter I've been paying for the heating, but over summer, I'm not saying everyone go and do this, but it's a way we can start thinking about things differently. I use the polytunnels for free heat for at least 5 months a year.
And
I will get water from 20 degrees upwards for at least 5 months for not paying a single penny out. Yeah, that to me is smart,
jackpot,
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's compromise, and I'm going off topic a bit. You might have to rein me
No,
back in,
it's
but
fine.
I think this is as I think more about we're getting into this and talking. Everything we do as koi keepers to make it enjoyable for us naturally goes against what's best for the fish in just about every possible way. Starting with the first one of having crystal clear water. You know, the obsession to have it absolutely crystal clear, not a particle in. Who is that actually good for? Because we know it's probably
ego.
Probably not in the best interest of the fish in the slightest, because straight away there you've got, you know, in the height of the summer, maximum UV penetration, which ain't great for the skin, ain't great for the pigment.
Ages fish.
Yeah, you know, it's not good there. Yeah, I think nearly every choice made is not what's right for the fish. My whole mentality to koi keeping and the way my facilities are built is everything's been done with what's in the best interest of the fish. That's the first question before anything there is built. What does it need to be like in order to get the most out of it for the fish? Then we work around all the other problems accordingly. So I think that's important. And there again, you know, you look at aesthetics of a pond. Aesthetics will get in the way of, don't get me wrong, people don't want a great big polytunnel in the backyard, but if it's something you could do,
or an adaptation of it,
definitely well worth looking at, because that's free heat. But then again, you know, what do we do? It's summer, and this is a way people have heated ponds for decades now, you know, using heat for winter, not for summer. So when they're deciding to invest in heating, they're using it at a time of year that adds no real benefit. It's crazy. When, you know, summer's the time you want to be doing it and making the most of it. Koi show is just another prime example of, they've been probably, for whatever reason, commercially, whatever it is, wedged in at a time of year when it's absolutely detrimental to the fish, right in the middle of the growing season where you're going to be interrupting it. And maximum growth is all about incremental gains over this period that you're doing it. So yeah, I just look, there's probably more and more stuff as I think about it, but that seems to be the way koi keeping is done, and probably why we don't all get the end results we desire, because unless you're in that mentality of fish first, everything you're doing is a compromise sort of from that point onwards. So yeah, bringing it back to your point, the Shinoda Heel Saw is stripping away the heating, but bearing in mind that I'm getting it free for 5 months at least. They are, so 1,000 fish went into 3,500 gallons. That's I think it's 20 foot by 8 foot, that pond. Single bottom drain, where most people would put 2 in. Well, the minute you put 2 in, you're either...
compromise the pool.
You're either there shoving 2 drains into one system, which seems to be done because of drum filters a lot these days, or then you're having to run 2 independent lines, which is instantly doubling your running costs. Single drain up to a drum filter. Again, we've got the cleaning pump on there, but they're not on continuously. It's only marginal. That flows through to fluid bed, 500 litres of K1, and I think it's a Noah's or Aquamax Eco 8,500 that runs that pump back through a 55 watt UV, then 2 Evolution Aqua air techs running, one to the pond, one to the fluid bed. Now, as I sort of rabbit on, just dig up Evolution Aqua's site on there, and we'll top these running costs up. You've got the Aquamax pump, 8,500, an AirTech 130 and an AirTech 150. So that system, those fish went in there, 6 to 12 cm at 1,000 fish. Now, as of the last episode of that video that we did, the last selection, those fish were up to 35 centimetres already, as you know, and they've been absolutely phenomenal. They look in prime condition, skin, shape, body, everything looking the nuts. And that system is turning over once every 2 hours, and in my opinion it's about as basic as a koi pond can get there. You've got 1 additional air pump, yes, but just consider that stocking level, you know, starting at 1,000 fish And after the second selection, so at the point of growing, I think from around 15 to 18 cm up to around 30 to 35 on average, or 28 to 32, I think it was the average, that pond's had 350 fish in it. That's an obscene amount. That's stocking levels that nobody's even going to comprehend.
Are they AirTech 130s, Rick?
Yeah, 130s and a 150, sorry, one of each.
Okay, so just, I don't know precise models, but as a rough tally up, 60 watts for the pump.
Yeah.
And the air pumps are about 75-ish watts each.
Wow. So,
and the UV, obviously, although it's, what was it, 110, did you say?
55 watts.
55, but that won't even run, obviously, the way the UV bulbs work, they won't run at 55 watts.
I don't know, round it to 300 watt for the whole system.
Yeah.
That's a 3,500 gallon pond that's
very successfully
drum
raising
filtered,
fish.
Successfully raising, the 500 litre fluid bed running off the air pump, I could increase the capacity in there easily off that same air pump still, and work really well. So, and it's at a turnover rate of let's say once every 2 hours at that point. Now, yes, I've just made modifications to that to eke it out further, but the only reason I've made those mods is because of the stocking levels and the feeding. This is on a commercial scale. This is not, I think it's probably fair to say most hobbyists with that size pond are probably looking at absolute heavily stocked, probably 20, 30 fish. Yeah. More so, probably less than 20 on average. So when I see then that you're running a shower, which instantly, I've just added a shower onto that pond, yes, because I know I needed to increase the turnover because of the sheer amount of feeding, but also to saturate the water with oxygen better. But again, that's added, we've gone with the VariFlow 30,000, 400 and something watt. I mean, instantly there, look, it's
more than doubled.
That on its own is more than the whole system's just been running for. Then you look straight away at UVs, I don't know what you ever taught. I got taught 10 watt per 1,000 gallon of water for UVs to keep clarity. Always worked, always served me well. So that pond realistically could run with a 35 watt. Be borderline because of the UV intensity, because of the greenhouse.
I think a lot of people, because they up the flow rate, they lack contact time with the bulb, exactly. So they're forced to go up on size,
creating all their own problems again. So you've got this. So you're running more turnover than you need, which is probably leading to system inefficiency because you're dropping retention times across everything. So you're running more there in a pump than you need, for one. Air pumps, I can't argue with that. I mean, the sort of bit liberal, the more the merrier. But the fact is, that system was running on bare minimum air pumps. Put your UVs. I'm seeing people having a pond like that, sticking 110 watt. You don't need 110 watt. You've literally there doubled wattage and it's just excessive. For what? You won't be killing bacteria or viruses. You're not sterilising with a UV clarifier. The proof's in the title there, isn't it? That's UV clarifier. UV sterilisers, different beasts, different bulbs, completely different unit setup and completely different price range as well. So I look at everything there and think, well, that's a hobby there that, running cost wise
is attainable for
300 watt. That's
your average.
That's a big pond. Yeah, let's face it, it's a big pond. So if we scaled that down to a really basic level, use the 1,500 gallon systems that I've got. Much simpler there. They run an Aquamax 6 Eco 6000, I think it is. A 25 watt UV. It might even be a 15 watt. I'm not sure. And then one single air pump, an AirTech 130.
So 45 watts for the 6,000, give or take.
75 for air pump. We just said, didn't we?
That was for a 130.
Yeah, that's what's running on there.
So 100 and plus the UV. Yeah, 160-ish watts, give or take.
I just can't see where, for a hobby that someone loves and enjoys, how that is excessive.
I think the way the question was angled by Gary is, what can the industry do? In my mind, I was thinking, what can the manufacturers do? I think they're doing what they can. It's certainly not in their interest to not be at the cutting edge of efficiency.
I think this is people to show the light on what can be done with such basic tools.
I think it's more of a job of retailers to educate.
Let's look at how most people possibly are setting up a 3,500 gallon pond these days. Possibly going 1 or 2 bottom drains to a drum, so it's going to be possibly a big system at that point. Skimmer as well, shower. So when you're adding all that on, you're getting into some serious juice at that point. And then obviously heating's the big one. But even when you get into heating, there's loads of different ways of doing it. You know, again, it's the concept. Heat it in summer when everything, you know, in winter, nature is working against the heater.
I think if you are, you know, there are going to be circumstances, we've both said it before, where, you know, if it's the difference between sort of really struggling and keeping your pond running, then there's not a decision to make, you know, the pond has to go. But for a lot of people, it's their absolute pride and joy. You know, they literally put their heart, you know, it's their sanctuary, and to give it up because of a lack of understanding or the mindset that you have to keep fish in a certain way would be sad to lose people from the hobby because they've have an over complex system. I think that would probably be my
adding heaps of costs. And then you look at all the array of things out there. Obviously food's a big one. Yes, there's different levels of food, but I mean ultimately if you look at it, boil it right down, so long as you're feeding them, you're doing what you can. You know, yes, there's different levels of food, and if you can obviously step through them gears and have the best, that's fantastic. But if you're not, there's loads and loads of other options out there and available, and all the additives as well that you'll think, you know, you can be led to believe you need. Yes, some of them do add great benefit, but throughout all of this and me mentioning the pond, the Heelsaurus, I mentioned no additives.
No.
Because the most I use is some clay. That's it. You know, water, we get on about it again. Prices, everything going up.
Yeah.
Water, there's people flooding shitloads of water.
Well, we're touching on that in a minute, but yeah.
Trickling in, trickling out. So then straight away at that point, you're burning through more purifier cartridges. You need to do more testing because you've got to keep on top of that water, and then you've got a load more water to pay for as well. When the fact of the matter is, you're probably going to keep your fish better if you turn that off and just do your filter maintenance and top it up. So yeah. All of it, when I see all of this, it drives me absolutely crazy, and it's why I'm so keen to show people how simplistically I'm doing it, and that from me comes from the guys in Japan. You know, look at fish and how they're raised in the summer out in the mud ponds. I can't tell you any more there. You know, that's just through experience, technique, and skill. That's it. Yes, they've got nature, they've got the heating in the summer, but likewise, I've just said I've replicated that in the UK by having polytunnels. You know, but you look at how simple they keep things. I think they must look at what we do at times and just think we're on a different planet.
I think they do. I think they do. I mean, I remember.
But again, sorry, just to butt in, their whole mentality, everything is done fish first. Every decision they make is what's best for the fish. Nothing else. There's no compromises on that. Because what would be best for the fish in the winter, because again, they know they need to heat in winter to grow and do what they're doing to raise the new season toe size successfully. A very, very thick-walled, probably dark, insulated room would save them a fortune on running costs. But they know that's massively detrimental to the fish. So we've got to use something clear to let the UV through, because that's so important for the skin, the pond environment, the walls, the algae, all the rest of it. What's the compromise of that? It's not a great insulator. So we've got increased cost there, but that is what's best.
It's a necessary evil
for the fish. This is it. So I think a mentality shift is probably needed, but we are a very commercial world, and unfortunately that gets in the way a lot. But boil it down, koi keeping really can be dead simple, and it is, in my opinion.
I had a sort of going off on a tangent a little bit. I had obviously probably in touch with more hobbyists directly than you have been for a while, and over the years I sort of see all sorts of setups, and you have bad eggs in all industries, you know. Let's not get away from that. I went to one particular guy, and I'm not kidding you. He had literally a pump for every fish that was in the pond. It was madness.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, and he was like, I need it for the dealer told me I need it for the oxygen, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, let me explain the relationship between dissolved oxygen and temperature and how you'll hit an optimum sealing point.
Yeah.
Said, let's just start flicking things off. So sort of went, because basically his missus went mental at him because he had his quarterly bill through.
Yeah, I bet.
It was outrageous. God knows what it is now.
Yeah.
Said, you know, we're in the summer, you're at 20 odd degrees, you're only going to get a maximum reading of X, Y, Z at a given temperature, no matter how many pumps you have running. Okay, you've got a little bit of cover there if one pump breaks. I kind of get that.
Yeah.
But if you're moaning about running costs, then that's not the way you do it.
No.
And basically, flick. Right, next day, tested dissolved oxygen levels, same levels.
It would be, wouldn't it?
It's this mindset that more is always better.
Yeah.
And I get it, you know, it's you build in that safeguard.
Yeah.
You know, if your pump packs up, then you've got 20 other pumps running.
Yeah.
But not at the expense of giving up the hobby.
I just think as how things change, new things come along, don't they? Which shakes people. You know, I think the big change in turnover rates came when backy showers were introduced.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden there's this new methodology of chuck as much water over it as you can, which is great. If you really want a shower to work at its best and get the most from it, it doesn't come down to the media inside of it, it's the concept. If you can smash water over it, really get the molecules shrunk down and almost try and turn it to vapour and gas, you're going to get a seriously good result from that shower. And I look at Momotaro doing it. I say it again, you know, there's pipes there that are sort of 6-8 inch in diameter pumping water over showers. You know, even I don't know anybody over here who's sort of replicated it how they have.
Not to that degree.
No, and even Sakai, you know, Sakai has the stainless steel 3-tier systems that run with no media inside. Look at them, I mean, it's a fantastic looking system, zero media. All it's got is a fine stainless steel mesh in the bottom, and they pump water over that at some serious volume as well, 4-inch up into the top. And you stand near them, I'm literally talking like shower ear thing, you can feel the movement of air and sort of vapour coming around it. That's all they're using it for, degassing and oxygenation. That's it, but it's obviously it's a commercial decision to do that. And again, we're talking ponds that are heavily stocked, massively heavily fed. People out there might think they're feeding a lot. When I say heavily feeding, most of the ponds I'm hitting are a kilo a day plus. You know, I don't know too many others who'll be doing it. Probably at the highest end of the hobby, the guys competing on the show scene, whatever it is. But again, that's all choices that those people make, not necessities. So yeah, people like they say the showers come along, get introduced, then all of a sudden it's like, well, we need to be doing that. Turnover's relative to what you're doing, to how your pond's stocked. You know, you've got 10 fish in 3,500 gallon, feeding a few hundred grams a day. Once every 2 hours is going to suffice, more than enough. Until you crank that up, there's no need to be changing it.
It is always relative. If you could justify it, happy days, good for you.
Yeah.
It's just more, you know, we're trying to reach out to all levels of the hobby, and perhaps those guys that treat it more as a hobby as such, that don't have the full grasp of keeping fish on a
just knowing what works at a basic level and what you can then actually achieve with basic tools, and then the things you can do after, if you've got the luxury of affording it, you can do to make incremental gains to what you're doing. But you've got to ask, what's the purpose of them incremental gains? I've added that shower to that Hiyotsori pond because I want to maximise growth, because ultimately that's going to maximise revenue for me when those fish sell. I can probably, through the biocapacity as well, stock it a bit heavier than I would typically to get that growth as well. So all round, that seems like a sound investment to me. But if we're flipping that to a hobbyist pond, I don't see what's to be gained probably in adding that shower if you're again talking 10, 15 fish with a good biological system in place anyway. And I'm not sure what's to actually be gained.
And certainly if that's a decision that may or may not allow you to keep the pond or to build the pond, if you're weighing up costs. So I think in a nutshell, I think we've covered that quite well. Good question, Gary.
Yeah, very good question.
I think apply some logic. maybe go and see some more simple systems. Visit Rick's YouTube channel. I mean, like I say,
I can't literally. The results, in my opinion, speak for themselves, and I can't do much more than demonstrate that and explain how it's been done. You know, that's it.
Yeah. So next question from Rachel Yardley. Goes as follows. I understand your views on feed and the benefits of the high quality feeds. I have a scientific background and I understand the concepts that you discuss about better quality foods, but they simply are not attainable to the average hobbyist. Like myself, if you fall into this category, what do you do? I sometimes feel like a bad hobbyist.
Good question again.
Yeah, tricky one. I think it would probably come down to understand conversion rate of feed, what you're going to benefit from each feed.
That's going to be hard though, isn't it? In reality, that's going to be
hard
for people
when you're in a shop scenario, it is difficult. So, yeah, where do you start with that?
I think the biggest thing is the one I've mentioned before. First and foremost, when you're looking at foods, is to break prices down to price per kilo, first of all. Because I think the different sizes and everything else out there makes it very misleading for people as to what they are actually getting value for money wise. You see this in supermarkets. It's one I've been drumming into my DOI from when she's walking around. The best deals are there with the flashy labels on, and I'll point it out, you know, even they offer promotional prices sometimes. You look and I said, no, look at the bit underneath where it says, you know, this is 13p per 100 grams or whatever it is, which is, you know, that industry has been forced into doing that. Again, coming back to the part, there's nobody doing that in the koi game because it's not big enough for anybody to care about. But if you actually do that, first of all, you'll realise some scary truths, that some of the absolute terrible fresh air floating sticks that are out there on the market that you get these massive bags for that are literally full of fresh air.
Volume versus weight, isn't it?
I'm not going to mention brands, but I know one of them, a market leader for a fact. Those sticks break down price per 100 gram more expensive than Sake Akari.
Yeah.
Now, when you see that, it's like, oh my God, you know, but the whole trickery of the commercialism, the size of the bag that's used, or the price you actually pay. Now I get it, initial investment, sometimes if you can't stretch to that larger initial investment, you're doing what you can. Probably a thing where Sake Akari goes wrong a little bit, not having a smaller packet than the 2 kilo.
Well, they did years ago. They brought out a sample bag and literally I couldn't keep them in stock.
Made sense, didn't it?
That would be too easy.
Yeah, well that'd be my first bit for me, straight down looking at the price per kilo, just to get it neutralises everything. It puts everything on a level playing field then, in my opinion, for you to make a really informed decision on what is right and what you can actually afford. And then obviously you've got the initial investment based on the pack size to bear in mind. But you know, if you're not actually using that much and you're scared away from the likes of Sake Akari because you think it's super expensive, but you actually find out per kilo, I'd say it's better value than sticks, which are a load of shite, quite frankly. What are you going to do?
I think there's a degree of relativity as well. It depends what level you are in the hobby. Obviously, if you're buying high-end fish, there's a false economy to be had by feeding poor quality food. Yeah. So then there comes a financial implication if you look at it in that sense. If you're, I don't like to use this term, but if you're an average hobbyist, you know, you've got a pond, you spend a reasonable amount of money on your hobby, and you feel that you're not getting value for money with a feed, because you're not feeding, you know, you can't justify the cost of some of the higher end feeds. I wouldn't say it's necessarily, you shouldn't feel like a bad hobbyist. There's levels to any hobby. You know, what do you put in your car? You know, I'm sure you're a bit more of a petrol head than I am, but different types of oil, different types of petrol.
I tend to like rocket fuel for mine.
There you go, rocket fuel. But it's, you know, you can still drive your car.
The fact is, there's levels to everything. We can't get away from that. But the fact is, it's trying to do the best that we can, and again, just exposing some of the myths. So, for me, straight away, look at foods on a price per kilo basis first of all, so you get a real level playing field of what's actually sat. where, then look at what's completely necessary, because different diets will naturally cost more. So colour food, a good quality colour food with spirulina is always going to be the most expensive, and should be, because spirulina is massively expensive. The one tip I would give, coming back to the bad hobbyist comment, is basically flip the packet over, see what's in the food. You want to be giving it, any food you pick, regardless of the price, as you know, wants to be fish meal based. And ideally fish meal in the first 1 or 2 ingredients in that list, because they're ordered.
In content, percentage.
That's it. If you turn that over and see poultry meal, walk away from it. That I believe at that point, because there will be foods that we're going to be talking marginal difference in price, that are poultry meal based versus fish meal based as the main sort of protein source. If you actively knowingly choose one that's got poultry meal in its makeup, I believe at that point, you probably are being a bad hobbyist. If you're aware that that's not a good thing, and then you actively choose it, and I'm talking over a few pence, probably difference that it is, I think that's a bad decision. But at the basic requirements, when you're looking at a food, pick it fish meal based, the rest of it, work within your budget. It's as much as I could say, really.
I mean, it says on here that Rachel has a scientific background, but for those that are perhaps unfamiliar with what we're saying, obviously fish meal protein is formed by amino acids. There's a group of amino acids that are more conducive to the carp digestive tract.
Yep.
This is why some foods get quite a lot of wastage from them, and this is why some foods generate poor results in the fish.
Yeah.
So, obviously a poultry or insect meal or blood meal or any other protein source that's derived.
I'll take the insect meal one out of that, by the way. But go on.
Well, I trialled a food with the insect meal, and I did find I tried it on about 8 ponds, and I also did a trial with about 60 hobbyists. I don't want to mention the name of the food. Results were good in terms of the results for the fish, but fouling of the water was quite high. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, this is not a scientific.
No, they're in their infancy, aren't they still? But I don't think insect. You talk about insect meal. I wouldn't put insect meal in a category with poultry meal.
No, I'm just saying per example. Yeah. But obviously, fish meal being the number one.
That's it.
Area to derive protein from. Yeah. So that's sort of what we're touching on there, and obviously that is quite a costly. Yeah. What make no bones about it. It's a costly per kilo product to use. Yeah. When you're creating a food, hence why feeds are more expensive.
It's only the same as anything. Dogs are the same. Don't get me wrong. It's not a world I'm been in, because Mrs. is always trying to get a dog in the house. But that's big. You've got your basic stuff, haven't you? Right up to I've seen some at prices they're paying for these. Was it raw diets and all that crap at minute?
Yeah, that's me, mate.
Fucking hell.
But you see it, you really do see it in the dog's coat, the way they behave. It is bizarre. You really are what you eat. So I don't think there's much of there's a direct parallel with every living organism. You are what you eat.
There's them levels, but you can I would say the one thing you can't compromise on is having it fish meal based. If you've got that, the rest of it,
it's a good foundation.
Do the best you can. But obviously, there's another reason on this that I don't get into naming other brands really too much, is because I just know, it's the food industry is a nightmare one to navigate generally. So much out there. Marketing obviously influences a lot. Dealer preferences. It is a tough one, innit? I really do empathise with everyone out there.
It's a minefield, isn't it?
Don't know where to start. So for me, I only talk from experience. I've used a cheaper brand food, moved away from it because of a change for some reason, or from fish meal to poultry meal. We know why, it's to save costs. And just why, again, I won't just bang a drum, because a lot of foods out there do the job. They provide nourishment to your fish. It's just how far you want to go in it.
I would hope that technology at some stage would come in, and maybe there could be some sort of some food that comes out that has the benefits of what we need in a good koi food without the cost. It's just we're way off at this point.
Yeah, this is it. Because what does it come down to? Even when we talk about fish meal, there's levels of fish meal. We know that there's different grades and qualities of the stuff. You know, and that's what you see in pricing of food. But like I say, I think just bring it back down to basics, basic requirements. Like I spoke about, basic requirements to actually run a pond, basic requirements for a food. Make sure it's fish meal based. Happy days from that. If you can afford, what I wouldn't get tied down too much is this sort of mid-market stuff where there's a lot of brands competing, the stuff that's maybe at the cheaper end. So if you are struggling financially, you decide to use a cheaper food. If it's fish meal based, great. You're doing that because of budget constraints, that's fine. If you're in that middle bracket, I think that's where you've got to be the most cautious, because a lot of them prices, I think you'll find if you do the price per kilo trial, a lot of those prices really aren't far away from Saki Akari. So I think for me, this is it. I think if I was to have to choose to use something else, I'd probably go straight back more towards the bottom end of market than float around in that middle bit, because around in that middle bit you are paying a lot for food that's touched hands multiple times, moved around a lot, fancy packaging, claims of stuff that aren't really all that relevant as well, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's where you can get your fingers burnt a little bit.
And obviously we when we were weighing the fish back in January, December, this is where you can get into the depths of things and the economy of the feed, because why do you feed? What's the purpose of you feeding your food? If you're looking to grow your fish, then you need to direct your feed around that. If you're looking to maintain your fish and just have a healthy pond, okay, that's a different set of criteria. If you're looking to grow fish, you've done it, I've done it, fed multiple different diets, and then tried to roughly work out the conversion rate. You need, on some feeds, again, it pains me, but I'm not going to say the manufacturer's name, you need to feed double the amount to get the same results as you do with a higher quality feed. So at that point, it is an economy of scales, you know. At the end of the day, if you need to feed 20 kilos to get the same results as you would do feeding 10 kilos of food, then
the price, unfortunately there's not a lot of that data out there. The best I can give on that though is, even within my Saki Akari bubble, if you like, is last year when I got back to using it properly for the first time, I had two ponds, literally the two of the 3,500 gallon ponds right near each other. One feeding Saki Balance, because again I was trying stuff out at this point. One feeding Saki Growth, and it literally got, both ponds were flying, but the one pond on the Growth I could see the body volume was gaining faster, which is normal. Balance is literally it's a tick over food. Very good one. Growth isn't made for that exact purpose. It's higher fat, it's going to put more weight on the body. But it did get to a point where just by monitoring, it was the same size pellet, so just by monitoring the feeding amount, stocking levels were very similar as well. Just by looking at the feeding amounts in seconds on the feeder, the one with Balance was literally nearly double the amount of the ones with the growth food in. And at that point I pulled it out of the feeder and put growth in. I thought that's completely brain dead. It ties straight into what you're saying. That's even with just different variations of an elite food in its own range. So I'm with you on that one. That's the whole conversion things is massive.
So I think it comes, Rachel, I think don't be too hard on yourself, but obviously try and take on board what we've said.
Strip it back. And sorry, just my last bit to add to that as well, just again, like I've said with the dealers and quarantine protocols, do a bit of research. You know, for me, you look at Akari's diets are all their own, from their own research, from all their investment, everything that they've done, it's all from their facilities. If we look at other foods out there, you know, where I believe Takazumi is another one, to be honest, probably the only other food I mention outside of Akari generally. Takazumi was a unique recipe developed off the back of some really good scientific research and pretty good quality ingredients used in it. And then I even go down to Coppens, most ranges within the Coppens diet. Again, because it's very affordable food, you often find rebranded in the UK under different own label things. But again, you look at their setup, one of the biggest fish food manufacturers in Europe that have got all their own research facilities that they put into these diets. Economies of scale on buying ingredients like fish meal makes sense because they're buying more than anybody else as well. A lot of the mid-market stuff you might find when you look is being probably produced. It's a branded food, but probably being produced by someone like Coppens when you actually dig it back, because are these people out there actually got any manufacturing or research facilities to actually put together a good quality food? If they haven't, I'd obviously question. Then you start looking at the chain involved. So like with Coppens, it's direct from manufacturer. I believe Takazuma is, I might be wrong on that one, obviously in charge of their own manufacturing as well. So straight away there, you've got a higher quality food potentially coming at a lower cost, and you shouldn't then just be looking at based on the cost alone. Because you can be led to think some of that mid-market stuff that's pitched a little bit higher in price in a nice fancy packet is going to be better than, say, Takazumi that's cheaper.
It's just fluffed up. It's marketing, isn't it?
That's it. So just do a bit of research, and I would personally, if I look at that, those 3 foods there that I mentioned have got big resources behind them and a lot of development in their own recipes and products. So that's where I'd probably be looking to put my money.
Okay. Yeah, good conversation that. Andy Robbins. I keep being told conflicting things about trickle in, trickle out. My water parameters are perfect, my scrapes are always whistle clean, but my koi constantly seem irritated. I am led to believe that if you want to feed heavy, you must have a trickle-in system. Can you shed any light on this, please? For those that aren't familiar with the concept, trickle-in, trickle-out is essentially water from your tap running through a declaw unit, slightly overflowing your pond constantly. Essentially doing small water changes 24/7.
Or big water changes, depending on how you got it set.
Depending on that. I might jump in first here because I've had direct experience. It's I come from a place down south which is notorious for having poor source water. Obviously, I think up here, don't get me wrong, you're blessed a little bit better up here.
Certainly up at Koi Wholesale, we've got a half decent supply, but again, even on that, past few weeks, there seems to have been some weird shit going on with water.
So where do I start with this one? I understand the concept of trickle in, trickle out. I understand the benefits, reducing TDS, increasing feeding behaviour, blah, blah, blah. Do I advocate it? No. I believe that the process of being a successful koi keeper, you need to build an ecosystem. And if you have chemicals constantly going in your pond, you will interrupt that balance.
Completely.
And I'm pretty staunch advocate of that. I understand why people do it. Literally last night,
I don't.
Andy, you what?
I don't understand why they do it.
Well, there are.
I do. I'm obviously playing a bit dummy.
Well, when you see the results of them doing it and cocking their fish up, you do question. Literally last night, I know he won't mind me saying, Andy, a guy that's quite well known in the industry, in the hobby, unbelievable pond, messaged me pictures of his fish. That they look sick. You got trickle in, trickle out. Yeah, stop it. And it's constant, Rick. It's fish. Water parameters are fine, because they're swimming around tap water.
I think I keep saying, I think it's one of the biggest problems in koi keeping right now. There's not enough knowledge about, and this is there is knowledge there. Ant Alpha, all clear purifiers, was one of the big sort of researchers on this. She had a great product and a lot of research to back it up as well. You can find, if you Google her website, I think it's still up. She's got loads of articles and bits that she published about this, but she was the first one that really started bringing awareness to it. But just so many things in all that you've said, Ty, I think, again, the misconception that you need it to lower TDS and to get ultimate fish growth. I am the exact, I don't even know what the words are, but I discredit that theory straight away through the methods that I practice and that I use. Extreme fish growth in an environment where the water and the ecosystem is just left to be as uninterfered with and untouched as possible. TDS, we've got hooked up and absolutely hung up on this whole TDS thing. I don't test it. I don't care for it. It's not relevant. I'm looking at what's going on in front of me, because again here, trickle in, trickle out, it's a decision made. Is it actually made in the best interest of the fish? Because are people...
I think the intentions are there.
Are people making that decision though based on chasing a TDS because they believe the TDS is the best thing in the interest of the fish? Well, it's not, and not when, you know,
other factors are at play.
Yeah, not when, you know, you've seriously got something there that's going to cause a lot of problems in the environment as well. And I just don't do it. I really can't stress enough, unless you know you've had that water analysed,
source water
at a laboratory level.
But even then, it can fluctuate.
Like, kind of like I say, we've known, we literally, was it you who filled a bowl the other week and it was just white out of the purifier? Just like, what are we dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I think too many people are reliant on keeping koi or their water parameters by water changing, you know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How many natural ecosystems have, you know, as long as you don't stock ridiculously, you train your filter to accept the feed that you're putting in the pond.
Yeah.
Most filters will perform, biologically speaking, better than people give them credit for. It's just that they are not
scared to push
trained.
The thresholds.
Yeah, they're not trained. They will go heavy a couple of days on feeding, and then they'll go to work, and the feeding will lay off, so the bacteria dies off. Then they go heavy on feeding again.
See a spike in parameters and back off.
Yeah.
It's a brutal thing. Again, I cannot say that the question directly ties into how I grow and raise fish intensively. I've discussed it already enough on this particular episode as well of how I'm doing it, and I rely on the biological filtration. The part that I come unstuck with is the rate at which I burn KH, because obviously it creates a very acidic environment naturally from the heavy feeding, bacteria working, everything working at its maximum and coming in. So
it strips the KH of the water.
Yeah, it does. And in that heavy feeding process, you want to be paying probably more attention first to mechanical debris, because even with the drum filter in this pond, there's times of the day when the system, you can see it physically needing to work its arse. Remember that Krashigoi pond I showed you the other day? After I manually fed it, within 10 or 15 minutes the water it looked decimated, didn't it, for a little bit. Massive feed that went in, but then within an hour it's all pulled back round. But dealing with mechanical debris is probably not spoke about enough from heavy feeding. And actually getting that out of the system as well. But like I say, the biggest issue I have, which trickle in, trickle out directly sort of counteracts, is KH. Because KH is that, as you know, it's the system, it's the glue of the whole system, holding the biofilter together, the pH, and when we really do burn it hard. I mean, you've again seen it. We can bring KH up and literally have it disappear 24 hours later again. It's crazy, but you can do things to counteract it. I think modern day filter systems have probably caused a problem with that as well, because when we go back to the days of bay filters, people creating all their own setups, different media setups and all the rest, and more often than not, a bay would be given up to something like the aqua or oyster shells for stabilising KH and pH. Whereas now you think, shit, I've got a Nexus, where am I putting all me oyster shells or lithaqua in that? So your only other option really is to have it hung inside of your pond, which no one wants to do.
No. I remember we used to have a joke at the shop when I used to run the shop.
Yeah.
A bag of oyster shells that sat there for about 14 years. And it was like, whoever can sell that, they get a pint sort of thing. But so it's just not the done thing anymore.
It's a massive shift that's happened, probably like with flow rates, because of new product and new techniques coming to market, but one that's then forgotten. So all of a sudden, rather than having something there to help stabilise this, again, like they do in Japan, masses of oyster shells, primarily because they've got soft water, so they've got low buffering capacity anyway. They know it's a problem. What do? We just stop doing it, and then let's trickle in more water. Yeah, that's great if you've got underground, very sort of pure source water like they have in Japan, but we haven't. You know, most breeders stay away from mains water. I'll keep saying it. They've not just got floods of main water running into the systems. You know, most of those that trickle heavily use underground water. So again, buffering. At the minute, that last shower I've just set up for the heel saw is I've actually left the top tray empty, and I'm planning to fill that with lithaqua. the whole just rows and rows and rows of Lithaqua. It costs more, but it tends to last longer than shells from what I find.
It doesn't break down as much. Yeah.
Really, really good product. And I'm just going to layer that up in there. And I do believe that will then add...
Oldie, but goldie that is, mate.
It worked, didn't it, for years?
I think I was unfortunate enough to have quite a lot of experience with quite foul source water, which really impacted every aspect of koi keeping, maintaining the filter, water parameters. This chap Andy is saying that his water parameters are spot on. That's fine, happy days. But obviously, if you're not so fortunate, it'll actually be hindering your filter growth.
Yes.
You know, I'm speaking to, again, I probably better not mention the water company because they've probably got quite deep pockets, but basically, engineer told me in COVID at that particular time, because of they're duty bound to come and test water if someone has a concern. Most people will judge their drinking water by the smell.
Yep.
So when it's particularly high in chlorine, can you come and test my water? During COVID, that was an issue. So let's switch to chloramine, which is chloride and free ammonia, essentially.
Harder for purifiers to strip out.
Yeah, and not as oxidizing. Doesn't oxidize as well as chlorine. Yeah. So straight away, before you even look at the metals and all the other...
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
You know, you're basically filling your pond with the antidote for killing what you want to grow.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? One of the most basic...
It's the complete mind-blowing...
One of the most basic things I used to see, obviously, growing up in my dad's shop was a great experience because I'm dealing with people who we sold everything. So people with their first ever pond, even just for goldfish, plants, first fish tank, whatever it was, that's what we're dealing with. So I had to learn to talk to people at that very early stage with the one of wanting to guide them through it. One of the big common things you'd often find is you do a lot of water testing for people and stuff. Yeah. So they come in, you know them, it's a regular customer, all of a sudden you come in and like, fish are wrong, blah, 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 you do it, we've got high nitrite. Right, can we just unpick what might have caused this? Because that's important to know. When did you last clean your filter? Last week. Right, how did you clean your filter? Box filters are quite a common thing on ponds that size, so you've got your foam, your meter inside, I got it all out, get it all a good hose down, bump, there we go, got it straight away. The hose
did pipe. 80% water change.
Yeah, not even that bit, just clean the filter out with hose pipe, so that very action of spraying everything down with that sterilising water, you've just destroyed that living filter system. Job done. And that was honestly one of the most common occurrences we get. First thing, nitrite salt, what have you done? Cleaned it out, always with that sort of filter, because people don't know. And that's fair enough. They don't know. Once you teach them, it's not a problem again. But yeah, water's nasty, really nasty.
It's ironic, really, isn't it? Because obviously, I don't think anyone does water changes with the intention of doing harm. No. But I mean, I've had higher nitrate levels in my tap water than I had in my pond. Yeah.
And then obviously we come to and then people obviously then choosing to use RO, which is fair enough. One I'm not going to get into today, but you know, what are the reasons if you're going to go that far? What are the reasons for doing that? Yes, ultimately you're going to get a base liquid out the end of it, aren't you? But it's lacking a lot of stuff. You can't just run pure RO into a pond. No, you're going to kill everything that way as well. So at some point, you've either got to remineralise it like they do in the marine world, you'll know more than that than me, or then ultimately what you're choosing to do is then also run a percentage of mains water still alongside it. And then you're just doing it to try and appease a TDS figure.
The recycled RO seems to be the route to take at the moment, but I don't think... Hopefully that doesn't come into mainstream. Don't get me wrong, if you're an advocate of it, good for you, you know, but I just think it would bring a whole plethora of issues to hobbyists if they go down that route.
Just coming back, obviously the base of the quote I believe was around heavy feeding and obviously filtering that water. Set your bloody filtration system up right. If you know heavy feeding is the priority in fish growth, set your biological filters have quotas and capacities. EA have done it for years with K1, X amount of media to so many grams of feed in. It's not a perfect formula,
it's a
but
guide,
it's a good guide, but you know, you can't overdo it in them circumstances. But I think this again where a lot of even system design concepts have just gone out the window.
Yeah.
It's all just look at that. A Nexus says that'll do 4,000 gallon on a Nexus 200, whatever it is, or whatever they quote. That's how people are looking at filters these days, not actually the concepts of filtration and how it works, and you know, the volume of media needed to process X amount of feeding levels that you're doing, the retention time needed to achieve it, and the turnover rate of the pond. That is when all these things come into impact the mechanical filtration and how you deal with the amount of mechanical debris coming from heavy feeding. All just seems to, it goes out the window because it's like I say, it's easier these days to go, well, Nexus does 2,000 gallon, but even at that, the difference between a Nexus off the shelf with the basic 50 litres of media in compared to the 200 litres that it can hold, completely different beast. So much more to it, but you can achieve heavy feeding just with basic water changing done from maintenance intervals. You've got to get your system set up right. That's all it is.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever changed my opinion on that. If it works for you, well done. But just be wary of it, because this source water problem isn't going away anytime soon. And obviously the rate in which your carbon expires, how do you, that's everyone always used to say to me when I bought a declaw unit, how long do they last? And literally they would laugh at me because I don't know. Got
to be testing, haven't you? Again, the minute you're doing that, you've got to be on that constantly. I think you can't ever be too safe. Liquid dechlorinators are, I think, underrated still for the efficiency they've got. If you're doing a fairly sizable water change after a maintenance interval,
I do both, to be honest.
That's what I was saying. Fill up with your dechlor and then hit it straight away. And just remember, when you're using a liquid dechlor, you treat for the volume of the pond. Not the 300 gallons, for example, you've just added in, unless you've got that water isolated and you treat it before you put it in. Just another common misconception with them. So
it's
my ending one on that is just trickle in, trickle out. Don't do it unless you absolutely know
and can manage
the full extent of the water you're putting in and can manage it.
I probably agree. We're probably in agreement on that one, mate. Final question from Kevin Woodbridge. I love raising young koi, but I often find they don't develop into anything special. I've been purchasing fry for the last few years from a British breeder. I have good success at growing them into nice healthy koi, but the quality is lacking. Where am I going wrong?
Stop buying fry. Sorry,
that's
really simple.
That is it in a nutshell. I mean,
you are. That's just done. This is again no attack on any breeders.
No. This goes for Japan as well.
Fry's a great business because it's very enjoyable for hobbyists. I get it.
I think in the first line there, I love raising young koi. Yeah. That's what you enjoy, Kevin. You know.
Difference is obviously the fry you're buying. You can't buy Japanese fry, and there's a reason. One, obviously generally they're too weak to export. Which is fair comment, but the Japanese get rid of all that stuff because it protects the quality level. In essence, their brand, quality level of Japanese fish, plus space is at a premium. It's all dictated by that primarily, as we know. Mud pond space, indoor fish house, all the rest of it. So that's just gone and got out of the market. UK guys, because people love it. If you're not spawning your own stuff, buying fry and the skills and tricks of raising them. We've been going that long, screen's gone. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, but please be aware you're not buying, it's just a random, from what I'm aware, buying a random scoop of fish that have already been selected through.
I don't think they're...
Unless I'm wrong.
No, and I don't think they're sold as anything other than that. You know, if you got... I'm not sure you're understanding, Kevin, I'm sure you do understand that the breeders are going to try and select the fish that have got the potential to grow into something that they can develop into.
Which is crucial.
And don't get me wrong, I'm sure every now and again there is one that slips through the net, but it will be few and far between, otherwise these breeders would not be good at what they do.
And they never make any money.
Yeah. So if they're giving away fish that can develop into something special, then they're probably going to be short-lived as a breeder.
Completely. So absolutely nothing wrong with going it, but if you want to raise better fish, you can do it with cheap Japanese, but you'll probably, in some cheap Japanese fish, you'll get the same sort of results as well. But obviously, you've got a lot from this. The quality of the lineage you're buying from will ultimately impact what you're doing. Some parent sets naturally chuck off. So, just an example, first breeder that comes to mind, NND, for example. I actually bought some very young Tosai from them a few years back. So I imported them in September. They literally came from harvest in the mud pond, were conditioned, didn't even go in the inside facilities, conditioned and shipped straight to me. That quality level was phenomenal, even still in the grand scheme of things. And they were rejected. In fact, they weren't even. It was fish that were typically they wouldn't have kept. So they actually, because I'd put the order in, they was juggling around with mud ponds, preparing them in separate ponds. Whereas literally they might have rejected them and got rid of them at some point. But they were superb. But the difference there is, to get to that point, they'd already been through 4 rounds of selection from spawning. So 4 rounds of selecting plus the quality of the parent fish they're from was absolutely top draw. So obviously there's a bigger volume to the set because it's an established set, and the quality of the offspring probably, you know, very high across the board for all that they're doing. So them I got at that point were great, yeah. To be fair, size was a bit crazy as well, because mud pond raised, they've been given quite a lot of it. But even in that set, if I'd have gone them a bit earlier, what I'd have been playing around with, there'd have been potential in there still. And this is why sometimes I'll choose, cheaper fish from a bigger breeder. Not saying necessarily you're going to always get better fish, but for me, they're possibly carrying better genetics. Yeah. So when it comes, when you're buying them smaller, cheaper Japanese fish, which you can do, it's worth being savvy about where from. And this is where you can learn some of the skills that you might consider high-end or elitist in selecting fish, which is ultimately the journey I've took. My interest has always lied in higher-end koi. It still is. It's my absolute passion. But what I've done from a business perspective is learn all of that criteria I have for assessing young Tosai and growing them into high-end, larger fish, and filtered it down to use them techniques on the batches of fish that I buy now in order to find quality amongst these big batches of, in essence, cheaper fish. And it's there. I can tell you it's absolutely there. You've just got to learn to find it. So, but yeah, you've got to cut out a lot of the process, and basically the fry you're buying in this scenario I described, those fish you're buying were probably rejected at probably the second selection at this stage before I got these fish from them guys at NND. So, yeah, it's just about going about it the right way. More than doable, and doable on a budget for sure.
Yeah.
You just got to refine them skills.
I think the fact that, Kevin, you sort of said that you love raising koi.
Most people do.
Your passion is there. Yeah. It's just about refining that selection process. And obviously, let's have a look. It sounds like you've had a few years of sort of not getting the results that you wish. So obviously that's what's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing. Not literally, Kevin. I'm only joking. But obviously, if you're not getting the results, there's plenty of dealers out there that have got offers on young koi. It's just about using your skills of selection.
Even that, if you want to stick down the English route, just speak to them guys about getting stuff that's from a further selection down the line. It's not got to be Japanese, but don't go for the fry. Go for the Tosai that they've kept, and that say it's the first selection they do after the fish have been raised indoors for a little bit. Go for that stuff, because they'll have already done
for them.
More selections on it at that point. So that's what I mean. It's just about being savvy in how you do it.
Yeah, cool. I've enjoyed that, mate. It's been a bit too long.
Long one, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Hopefully, not bored you all to death. But thanks very much as always. And please make sure you support the magazine. If you're not a member or a subscriber, should I say, then please jump on the website, and plenty of back issues for those that want to pick up on certain topics.
That's it, and they also look quite nice as a set on the wall.
I think so, mate.
Happy days. Nice one. We'll catch up with you all again soon.
All right. Cheers, Rick. See you guys.